Hi folks, I'm International Master John Watson, and this is Ask the Master on ICC TV. The main idea of the show is to provide a forum for players and fans to ask questions about chess and the chess world. You can send these questions in advance. That's usually the best way, to my email, which is askimwatson@chessclub.com, ASKIMWATSON at chessclub.com. That's CHESSCLUB.com, and I really encourage that. We haven't gotten quite as many in the last couple of weeks, so just feel free, pretend it's a free lesson. Instead of hunting around on the internet to find somebody to ask questions and pay them $100 an hour, you can just ask me for free. So think about doing that. You can also send a question or a comment to my ICC handle. If you're an ICC member, you just go message space John L. Watson, JOHNLWATSON. And actually, you can even, if you've been watching this show as not live, but after the show is up, you can put a question or a comment in the commentary section below the YouTube video. Right now, you can say anything you want to. I see Shidkey is there. On the chat, on the live chat, which is on the right of your screen. So I think before I get going, we've been swamped with a lot of chat stuff recently, so I've got a lot of things to catch up on because I get things by email, and I want to give some sort of balance with that. So let me just kind of plunge in on this. I was quite amused, and I can't really resist showing this because I sort of just ran into it by accident. We've been talking about the Belgrade Gambit a bunch. Hi, Jordan. We've been talking about the Belgrade Gambit a bunch over the last couple of weeks, and sure enough, I was on chess.com, and I noticed just by coincidence I ran into this Simon Williams video with a repertoire in the Belgrade Gambit. And so he gives a complete repertoire and one amazing suggestion. So I thought I'd show you that, and along with what he says real briefly, but what he says about some other lines too, the ones we talked about. Okay, so here's the Belgrade Gambit. It's a 4-knights game. But white plays this move d4, and there, instead of playing knight takes, I should show you this by the way, this would be sort of normal, and then one of the most famous lines of the Scotch begins there, and it's considered very equal and very harmless, and nobody ever seems to play it as white anymore, very seldom anyway, possibly a good drawing weapon. But in the Belgrade Gambit, you give up a pawn like that. We've talked about this for a couple weeks now. You can go back and look at the last couple of videos. And I'm going to come back to what he says about some of the other moves, but this is the fascinating one. Now, we talked about this idea of playing here, and if white plays queen here, playing this move f5, and there was knight here and knight back, and then black would play d3 in either case. And black was fine. I think you saw that black was doing well in those cases, especially after knight d2, which seems to just be good for black. Okay, so Williams looked around the literature and did some research and came up with this move. Didn't come up with it, but decided this move was worth trying. And he mentioned he could only find one game with it, and it was, oddly enough, it was by Bologan, who's a fantastically strong player and a real interesting player, as black, and white was a lower player who beat him. So I think this is a great example of finding something creative. Now the weird thing is you usually end up 2 pawns down. Let me show you a couple of the easy lines though first. If black plays here, I know that looks a little bit weird, the idea is to take and then play this move and get your piece back. But then white plays here, threatening queen h5 check, and that's just good for white. If black plays knight b4 and then f5, another attempt to get the piece back, because the idea is after knight takes, you've got bishop takes check. Then white has the move bishop here, just simply winning. So there are no really tricky ways to save your piece. So there's two sort of obvious ways. Well, here's one obvious way, it's just here, but this time white's getting his pieces out really fast, so this makes sense. Against the f5 lines as opposed to queen e2 f5, this makes a lot of sense because all white's pieces are coming into play really fast. Rook e1 is a big threat now. And the best move is here, blocking off the e-file, but then he gives bishop c4, stopping white from castling. This could be a lot of fun. You know, he builds a whole repertoire for white with the Belgrade. It'd sure be nice to have something to play against e4, e5 that's fun and leads to a lot of quick victories if your opponent doesn't know what's going on. And this is a tough position for This is a tough position for black. I'd say white's already better here. Let me see. He gives the main line is d6. If here you just let him take this, and then you take here with a double attack on this. Idea is a queen g4. There's two pieces attacking this. There's queen d4 attacking both knights in g7, and I don't know if he gives more. Yeah, he gives knight cd6. I think that's kind of a forced move. fd7. c6 check. Now he can't play g6 because of queen e5, so he plays knight f7. It just a nice looking attack, right? It looks like something is going to go wrong really quickly here. Rook e1 takes. Now that means black's still a piece ahead, but now look at this. Now we're threatening rook takes e4, and white's already a pawn up if he gets a whole piece back. Plus he's got the better position because his bishop is so bad and he's way ahead in development. So at this point, I suspect it's pretty much all over, but give me a second. What does he give as a try here? Nothing, just castles. And he said white is basically winning. A pawn up with a really good attack, and obviously the better game. Look at that outpost on d5. Okay, so that's what he does against f5. Now, a very natural move is knight f6, but he has a very simple answer, which is check, forcing bishop here, and then he gets to double these pawns. And this is a good instructive example because owning that square in front on the king side is worth usually a lot of material. In this case, I guess, what is it, 2 pawns? You're 2 pawns down, but boy, if you can get a knight on f5, sometimes even a bishop there, and black's having trouble running away, because if he tries to run away with the king over here, then he gets bishop h6 check. But let's follow up with the analysis first. Let me see. The next move for white is castles, obviously. Black plays d5. If he tries to run over here, he gets stuck with check, and he's going to get mated really quickly. Some move like probably, even knight takes pawn will probably do it. Threatening queen g4 check and knight f5, followed by queen g4. So he really can't try and unpin that way. But rook e1 is coming, so he plays d5 to try and block off rook e1. Bishop now looks fairly solid for black, but then white has a particularly nice move here. I think he has a good game anyway, but this is kind of a nice move. You know, this is these are doubled pawns and these are doubled pawns, so the extra pawns aren't necessarily that good. And now the threat is to get one of the pawns back and attack c6 and attack e6, and still black will have all these weaknesses. The h7 pawn, the f7 pawn, the f6 pawn. And it turns out this is pretty hard to meet. Let's see what he has black trying to do. Castles. Bishop h6, just bring all the pieces into attack as fast as you can. Rook e8. Captures, probably just knight d4, yeah. And now the idea is we can bring a rook up to the third rank. We bring the queen over to h5, bring a rook up to g6, g3, and just checkmate the guy. Let's see how he tries to defend his black. Plays here. Well, yeah, you're on this 3 times. Takes. I assume queen takes is going to be forced here, otherwise queen g4, and then just queen f3. Now we're hitting this queen, which can't defend against checkmate. That way, if the queen moves, he can't defend against queen g3 and mate, because if he stops queen g3, he allows queen g4, excuse me. So beautiful attacks here. See, wouldn't this be fun? I mean, if your opponent doesn't know what he's doing, this is particularly effective, right? So this is a really fun kind of opening. Okay, so that's knight f6. It really doesn't seem to work very well. And that leaves the best move, which is knight c5. Now this to me looks like it just should refute this, because black's 2 pawns up and he's going to have this really solid knight there blocking off any e-file attacks and protecting the king side. But white is way ahead in development. Now most openings where all you have is a couple extra tempi and active pieces, but your opponent has no real weaknesses, usually those kind of gambits don't work. And I think this is just an exception. Okay, so black plays this knight here move. One thing that does is it blocks off the e-file, but it also allows the bishop to come out without having to go to a more passive square, e7. So knight e6 makes a lot of sense. White plays very slowly, rook e1. 2 full pawns down, black has no weaknesses, and yet he's got enough compensation. Now bishop c5 was the intended move, but look at this. This is a real bother. Queen h5 is a threat. Knight takes h7. He can't castle because bishop h7 check. Queen h5 is coming, and it just turns out this is just a really awful position for black. And you can check that out yourself. I don't think I did much analysis here. If, what else? If knight e7, one thing you can do is just play c4 here, because these pieces are all tied up. Nothing's getting out. So that's a good move, because he can't take it, and if he takes en passant, of course, well, you could probably do it. You could just take back or play, probably just take back. And black's totally tied down here. So the threats are things like knight e5 is a good idea, maybe knight h4, f4, f5 could follow pretty soon. This is a fun position. So c4 is a possibility. I think he gave another move. Oh, actually, he gave c4, c6, bishop g5. Just jam all those pieces out as fast as you can. And you might say, well, wait a minute, he's giving up a piece here. But he isn't really, because if this knight moves, there's going to be d6, just absolutely destroying black's position. So h6 captures. He can also just retreat the bishop, but d takes is the best defense. If he goes here, he's just going to end up getting mated over here, I think. You can kind of see how dangerous this is. My guess is that this move will win by force. It threatens mate, and after that you've got check, and you're going to mate on the diagonal. See this way. Not to mention winning the queen, but you also have mates on the diagonal. Well, bishop e6, rook takes, and then mate. Okay, so, or you could have just taken the queen, come to think of it. This kind of thing is really fun, isn't it? I mean, this is why I want to show you this. It seems to me this, for this show especially, and this level of player and the kind of players everybody's playing, this is the kind of fun stuff that would actually give you a great thing. So he gives a bunch more stuff besides that. After knight e7, he also gives just plain this move. Pretty simple, just bishop g5 instead of c4. Another good move that probably almost wins, but I like c4. Okay, so let me see, do I have the rest of this game? That could be a problem. So the best move is bishop e7, just blocking off the file. 2 pawns up after all. And one slight problem I have here is I don't seem to have the rest of the notes to the game. Oh yeah, I do. Oh no, this is amazing. This really amazed me, because generally I'm very skeptical of gambits where you're 2 pawns down and the guy has no weaknesses to work on. So look what happens here. White now seems to have no attack at all, really. Very well placed pieces. Black's very tied down. But how are you going to attack? Look at this. Bishop d2. By the way, it turns out this was all in some games that were played, or at least one game that was played. Castles, c3, and also it's the first recommendation of the computers. 2 pawns now, no weaknesses, but full compensation. Because you're about to take this and put the bishop here, and once both bishops are aiming at the king, good things happen. That's the idea. Black has a really hard time getting his pieces out. So the main move here is taking, but he can also try to play bishop c5, and after that you can play b4 with a very nice game. For example, just to give you one example, b5, and if he goes here, bishop h7 check is your standard sacrifice. Is going to win the game. Here, I'll show you how that works. Check, has to take it. Queen checks, back, bishop up. Look at, well, also just check here. We'll do it. Well, that'll win the queen. Okay, so isn't this fun? I mean, this is great stuff. This is how you want to play chess if you get a chance. It's really fun. You can do things like this. Okay, bishop c5 loses for other reasons too. Just taking is very good, actually, as it turns out. I think we don't want to wait too much time, though. As usual, I'm going to get too involved and we won't get to the other questions. So I'll stick with you. Just trust me on bishop c5. Although there's one other very pretty line. I wonder if I should show you that. Yeah, there's another pretty line. Let me show you this. Takes, knight takes. What could be more natural? Check, takes. Is that right? Yeah, check. Now queen g6. The problem is if he plays this, we have the thing we just saw, which is at the very least you have knight e7 check, right? But you also have this. This is even better, I think. Captures. Oh, this is very beautiful. Now bishop takes. The queen has no moves, so you have to take it. But if you take this way, you lose the queen and then some. It's worse than that. And if you take this way, you run into this famous rook lift. And I think the best rook lift is probably to e3. Just heading over here. And if d6, then rook here threatens queen h6 check and queen g7 mate. I hope I'm not going too fast, but you can play over all this on the YouTube video afterwards. And just beautiful tactics. Just isn't this fun? I mean, this is how chess should be played, right? So going back, the main line he gives is just taking, and white takes, and just boy, that's getting scary. This stuff down here, and he gives this move, and then he stops after one more move. I kind of like this idea of sort of attacking this way. But, and it could even be that black's okay here if he's a really good defender, if he's Magnus Carlsen. But you do have enough for 2 pawns, and you may have more. Anyway, he gives this move, which is very clever because it has the idea of just zooming over here and heading for checkmate. Rook takes and queen takes. And in practice, this is very hard to defend. Now, if you were, a top grandmaster, maybe you could defend this position. But white's got all kinds of wonderful attacking chances here. And black's completely tied down. He's all messed up. It's very hard for him to find good scores for his pieces. Let's see if we can try something. I mean, for example, this move looks fairly natural with a little bit of a fork. But then we have knight takes check, knight takes, and probably bishop takes check would finish him off. Yeah, look at this. This is just a total, absolute slaughter. Queen h4 check. And now I don't know, if we play knight here, I guess there's bishop f5, so maybe we should just take this thing. Threatening queen g5, threatening knight g5, who knows what it threatens, but threatening a double, you've got so much stuff going on. Threatening bishop takes g7, for example. I mean, let's say he just made a move. Just throw that guy in there. It's just bound to work. Once the king's stuck on that file over here, that's big trouble. Well, I shouldn't have said this, that it was bound to work, though, because I haven't figured out the details yet. How do we do this exactly? Knight e5 looks like it would work. Yeah, I think that's going to win. A little bit odd, but one way to do it for sure. Yeah, I wonder if there's another way to win that. There probably is, but this will do it. You're going to play check and then take here. There might be other ways. Maybe just doubling wins. What about bringing the rook over? Maybe this way. Same theme as before. That forces f6, right? Or f5, maybe. Check here. Now, can we get the rook over to the file, or do we have to play knight g5? Yeah, knight g5 threatens both mate and the rook coming back. Okay, I'm getting kind of irrelevant here. I'm going way beyond the Call of Duty, but you can see. So that's his line against knight e4, which was giving us fits, and we didn't even consider bishop d3. Apparently, there's only one game with it. So maybe we weren't so silly not to know about it. So that's it, starting with bishop d3. Amazing attack, because really, what does white have? I mean, it's not that special with this tight a defensive position. No weaknesses, no kingside moves. Beautiful line. Okay, just real quick, before we go further, let me show you what he says about a couple of the other lines we talked about. He mentions the Karpov line, the bishop e7 line, and he gives the same line that we talked about, which is knight takes. Let me get this right. Knight takes, knight bd5, takes here, castles, bishop e2, d6, castles. He says white's a little better, but we don't really believe that. We already looked at this. I'm convinced this is absolutely, completely okay for black, but I think he wants to encourage the person. On the other hand, you can play it for a win. He thinks white's slightly better, implying that he thinks at least you can play for a win. I think it's actually equal, but that's okay. That's good enough for a repertoire to get a position that's playable and interesting. If your opponent plays well, that's what happens. There's also this bishop c4 move. If you want to keep it complicated, you can consider this move. I think black's doing pretty decently, but it's worth thinking about. Let me just see this for a second. Oh no, I'm sorry. He gives other lines, but not that one. Okay. So, so what else? Just real quickly, there's knight b4, and Williams talks about, I think, taking that, or playing bishop c4. That's his repertoire. I'm not all that convinced. I think the easiest thing to do here, and it's only equal, but it gives you a nice game. It gives you, good play. Just go like that, and castle and start attacking. And it's very easy for black to go wrong. I think it's equal if black plays well, but that's just chess, right? So I think this is a good thing. The other move we didn't talk about much, and I mentioned might be a good move, is this move knight b4. Oh, well, that's the one we just talked about. Okay, sorry. Not knight b4. Anything else? I guess that pretty much covers it for the repertoire. That's pretty much the most important lines anyway. And I would suggest just playing this way and continuing to attack. You're one pawn down, and you're threatening the center pawn, so you might even catch up in material. But in the meantime, you're attacking, which is what you want. Okay? Okay, let's see what we've got here. We've got, okay, going up to the top. Hi, John, ICC. I've got so much to cover today. Free with super quality. There you go. Hi guys. Chess Philosopher. 1 c4 c6 e4 d5. We have saw e5. I saw this recently myself. It's amazing. God, you guys are really, you're always up with recent things. I'm going to mention a couple of recent things you talked about over the last 2 weeks. And hi Yana. Hi Kirk. Hi Rich. This is great. Let's go and see that. This is, yeah, I saw this myself. I have no idea what to think about it. Somehow I'm sort of, it seems like a one-off kind of thing. Now you know there is this line in the Caro-Kann with, let me show you, with this, here, here, and then an early c4. So it's sort of similar to that idea. There's also another weird line that Short played, which was actually playing this right away, if I remember right. Is that right? I think it was. I think he played that move. No, maybe I'm sorry. He played this move, and then here, and then usually played an early c4. But that's not the Short system. It's something that he just sort of played randomly. But this one is here. Now, we have talked about already, I don't know if you've seen these, I don't know, the person asking here, I don't know if you've seen that we talked about this idea a lot. Now, not this going back into the pano, but this. And the idea that's different about this and the Panoff is that you don't play for d4 early, because you're holding out the idea of playing bishop here, here, or maybe even queen b3 sometimes, or queen a4 check. So you can go back to earlier things. We talked about that twice. Not playing the d4 move, not transposing to a normal Caro-Kann Panoff. So that's the usual idea of playing e4, but this one is really crazy. e5. Yeah, I think this it wasn't in Tata. It wasn't. It was somewhere very recently. And yeah, I have no idea. I think the guy took right away, which I thought I would like. If I was white, I think I'd like him to take, because I kind of like these positions with that structure, with the pawns here and a bishop on, and a knight here and a bishop on c4. They're probably only equal, but they're sort of fun. Now, what else can black do? Just seemed to me here that black should have other options, like maybe this move, just kind of cutting off the defense of that pawn. White's got to be okay. One nice thing about white can make odd moves because he's got an extra tempo, so he can do things that are a little bit anti-positional sometimes. I'd be worried about d4 though. Well, how exactly do you get a good game here? I don't know. Maybe your idea is to play bishop d3, castles, rook e1, and even bishop e4 sometimes. Maybe even b4 sometimes. Well, anyway, I don't know enough about it. Maybe you know more. You can always add some ideas on the chat here, or send me an email at AskIamWatson. And I'll look at that game, by the way, because what happened in the game was he took here, and white got pretty active play. Although I'm sure black's just fine here. Oh, by the way, what? Oh, I see. If this, you play queen e2. Okay, never mind. I thought you were going to win a pawn or something. Oh, I think something like this happened. There was a bishop g4. Now I'm starting to remember. There was some bishop g4 move, wasn't there? Maybe he made this move. Maybe this happened. Something like this. Anyway, we can check it out. I think this is a brand new move, by the way. It's wonderful to get these early third move innovations. Great question, by the way, and good that everybody knows about that. It's so much fun to have strange, odd things to play. Okay, John, when black takes the bishop with the bishop and leaves white with a double pawn on g3, what is the best way to manage those pawns and take advantage of the open h-file? I guess you're talking about a London system or a it's Nimzo Indian. There's quite a few openings where that happens. I think the best thing to ask is a concrete set of moves so we can really talk about it. Otherwise, it's not so easy to describe. I can show you, for example, I can show you, I just looked ahead to the comment about walking on water, folks. You might want to look at that. Great quote. I didn't know Andreikin had such a great sense of humor. But for example, in the London system, I think we've already looked at things like this. And don't worry about the move order. This could be any kind of move order. But we've looked at stuff like this. And if you take here, now there's two things. One thing is if the h-file is still open, that sort of changes the whole dynamic, because that in itself justifies doubling these pawns, right? But the other idea is that this covers this square. So you can play e4 without worrying about things like knight h5. I mean, just for example, let's say you played, let's say white played, whose move is it? Black's? Let's make it that black move. Take here. And white played for the move e4. And let's say we just let him play that. Queen e2 maybe. Oh, let's have black make a move. I don't know, something like this. I didn't make a terrible job of showing this, but one thing that can happen sometimes is that after that, black makes this move knight up. Probably a bad example because g3 is okay here. But anyway, that's often a kind of a little bit of a weak square. Even in these lines, that can kind of happen. I'm just not doing a very good job of showing it. I mean, maybe here and this. Yeah. Anyway, I don't have the exact right position, but knight h5 can be an equalizer sometimes. Like So played. Wesley So played that move. If you've already taken down here on g3, then let's just go castles here. If you've already taken, oh, this is even worse. Okay. Well, right now it's a very dangerous attack, and what white can do with these pawns is he can push them, even if it costs a pawn, to break open lines on the king side. So really, this is the worst time for black to take. Black should make a slower move here. But if black took before castling, for example, even then, this h-file is kind of useful. And you might still play g4, g5. I know right now he can take it, but you can play your normal moves first and develop. See, let's say black is trying not to castle king side. What would white do? Well, the thing is, if black castles on the queen side, you've got a pretty ready-made attack there. For one thing, d takes c5. And if he takes first, you have the c-file. If black captures first, you have the c-file. So for example, let's just say you make some normal move here, like this or something. Then, whoops, knight b4, sorry. Maybe I should play a3. Play a3. And here, you have a c-file idea too, as a possibility. If he plays h6 ever, then you aim for the move g4, g5. Which is not always that easy to organize, but it's a little easier than it looks, maybe. Okay, that's superficial. Thanks for that. So I liked Dmitry Andreyekin's interview with Anna Rudolph at Tata Steel when he said he likes to relax after the game by walking on water. It's really good. John, what book of yours would you recommend just to start to develop your openings? Well, I have written a 4-volume series called Mastering the Chess Openings, and it's the only general one about all openings. And it talks about ideas a lot more than the other books. Also what I call cross-pollination, where one opening, the same themes appear in one opening and another opening. So for instructive books, if you're just starting to develop your openings, might want to start with that 4-volume series and pick out things that you want to play, but also just learn about the openings in general. Yana Gazarian, what do you recommend I do as white against the Caro-Kann? Well, the thing that we just looked at wasn't bad, actually, and we've shown this several times in this show. You guys can go back and look at it. It's kind of a cool line. I think maybe it's, well, anyway, where you take twice here, and then you just get your pieces out. The idea is to play the normal moves, get your pieces out, and attack. But if black plays here, there's sort of a particular move order that we're looking at. Instead of playing d4, which is the most normal move here, if black plays here, we do play d4. But the idea is if black brings his bishop out in front of his pawn chain first, he can get in trouble. If he plays a move like this, we can play queen b3, for example, or maybe knight d4. I have to think about it. I think queen b3, attacking here and here. And if the knight retreats, then we start checking and play knight e5 at threatening checkmate, and d4. We just get a nice attack going. So think about those first two moves. That would be what you would play against the Caro-Kann, is these two moves, e4 and c4. And notice that if black plays something like this, the knight has no good square to go to. So you're getting an advantage. If black plays something like this, then it's a little hard for him to defend that pawn, and he has to play passively. And then you can break in the center and get a lot of space. So it's a very aggressive way to play, and that's why black usually does play this move. And then, as I say, you just take twice. So you have to look this up and think about it, and you can look at our earlier lectures, but that would be my advice as a simple way to play. The Gelfand books are getting really good reviews. Yes, exactly. I gave the only one I reviewed a very good one, particularly from strong players. Positional decision-making, for example. Is it because of the decision-making? Lots of good positional books. I would say not really. I think it doesn't help you make decisions that much. I'm not sure if any book can really tell you how to make decisions. But it's more, what's great about it is that here's this incredibly strong player, and he's talking about what he was thinking during the game. I mean, sure, that has to do with decision making, but it's more just kind of insight into how the guy's mind is working. He's not going to tell you, okay, this is how you win the game, this is how you can make your decision for every move or something like that. There's not a lot of general philosophy in it. So it's not really an instructive book in that sense. It's more of a games collection with real in-depth talk about what the ideas are and what he's thinking about, as well as just good games. I just like the book very much, and I like the book that followed that too. It's a great book. Yeah, I wish there was a great book on decision making. There have been about 30 that have tried, but I'm kind of unimpressed with them generally. Just because I think that's too difficult. I think you just have to learn about a lot of positions and play a lot, and you have to form your own way of thinking. No one's going to be able to tell you how to make up your mind because chess is just too complicated. It's just too difficult. But it's still good to see how these top players think. I mean, that'll give you a good start. It'll give you a good insight. All right, what do we got here? London system. Yeah, that's what I looked at. Okay, how can I develop my bishop on c8 and my a and b pawns in the Najdorf when white plays a4? Okay, well, we'll take a quick look at that. And then I want to get back to all the questions you've asked by mail. Let me scroll down and see how much. Okay, I don't have that much to go, so that's good. So we'll do the Najdorf thing, and then I'll run in and start doing my other questions, because I've got about 6 of them. I'll never get all 6, but I'd like to cover them. Things that people have sent me and asked me, and things from last week, too. Okay, so there's the Najdorf. And one thing you can do is play a4 right away. So let's look at a4 right away. The thing is, that takes a tempo, and it also kind of weakens some squares. I mean, you could just say, okay, my bishop's going to go here now. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good way to fianchetto your bishop anyway. One issue with a4 is that you can switch. Instead of putting, most players in the Najdorf like to put their knight on d7, and that's still an okay thing. But here, one thing you can think about is switching to a dragon-y kind of position, because I think you'll find that that's at least as valuable as that. For example, in the Najdorf, you play this move a6. Carlsen has played that, but white doesn't play a4. So let me just show you what I mean by that. Let's say white plays some normal move here. Say he wants to play the, like this or something, classical kind of thing. One thing that happens now is you can switch back to knight c6, and it turns out this a4 move isn't that practical. Isn't maybe that great a move. It doesn't go very well with the whole structure. So that's one thing you can do. Just play a dragon kind of position. And another thing you can do is just play normal chess, but maybe think about playing. Now notice, by the way, by playing a4, he's no longer able to play any Yugoslav attacks, right? You're no longer worried about the English attacking, this whole bishop e3 and f3 and either h4, h5 or g4, g5. Oh, and same thing in the dragon, by the way. The minute you play, there's no more Yugoslav attack, because that pawn, you can't castle queenside, basically. All the variations where white attacks with h4, h5, bishop e3, first of all, there's knight g4 here, but even if there wasn't, let's say f3, bishop e3. Look at the difference here. This kind of position. White's a tempo down, and this is useful for the queenside attack. So we get the normal position, but h4, h5 is going to be too slow. Going queenside is going to be impossible because of this big weakness on a4. Black's already better. He just targets the queenside, and this has really weakened white's king position. So once a4 is played, you have you have a situation where white's going to play some classical line. He's going to play a bishop e2, bishop e3 castles kind of thing. Or maybe g3 or something like that. But on the other hand, after g3, you can start, well, you can play normally, you can just develop. You can play the dragon system, or it's black's move first. Let's say you just play a move like this, for example. If he plays like that, well, I have to think about this for a second, about what's a good move order here. But you can just develop normally. And even play, okay, let's say we castle, or queen c7, something like that. And, you can just develop your knight naturally there, or bring it to d7. You've kind of got a choice of how you want to do this. A lot of times he'll retreat here, make a move like that. And then either move is good, but I think knight c6 is the most natural. The point is a4. Now your knight can sometimes go to b4 too. Sure, that's not an outpost because of c3, but he has to move his knight if he's going to get rid of that knight. So the knight can be handy on b4 sometimes. And this kind of position is just considered basically equal. You can play b6 and bishop b7 now, unless he does some particular trick against it. Okay, maybe that's a start anyway. Let's look at the next thing before I get completely lost here. Oh, I've been promising every week to finish up with Elliot Winslow's questions about the Dragon Sicilian. So let me put that one up. We have one more game to go in that little discussion. We looked at the bishop g5 lines, and this is different. Okay, here's our dragon, mainline dragon, and we're making all these normal moves. You can go back and look at this. I don't really describe these moves because it's a main theoretical line and it's very well known. A lot of you already know it. So to really find out why you're making all these moves, you'd have to probably look at a book on the dragon. But anyway, these are all standard moves. And what we looked at last time, what we've looked at so far is this move, bishop g5, moving the bishop for the second time, swinging the rook into the center and pushing it. It turned out to be a little more dangerous maybe than people have given it to be credit for. And you can go back and look at that. But in this case, we're looking at the move king b1, which is much more popular and more modern. And in fact, it may even be the main reason one of the reasons people aren't playing the dragon as much as they used to. Now, normally black answers this. It just turns out that white, after taking, is getting a very comfortable game. And so what I want to show you is a game where black does something different, playing this move. Okay. Oh, and by the way, the other waiting move that looks really stupid, but this is actually a useful move, because a lot of times knight d5 then won't be attacking that pawn, and there are other good things about it too. It gives you a little extra space. It's got some useful aspects. Very mysterious move, but this is the other slow move. Now, you don't normally make this move in the Sicilian, a6 and b5, but because king b1's a little bit slow, I think it's playable. So let me just show you how this one game went. This is the game Hernes Moyer from Germany in 2016. Oh, it's not this year anymore. Last year, 2016. Okay, so white attacks, black blocks. That's a standard idea. That's also a standard idea. Once h4 and h5 are in, white often plays bishop g5. And often black plays rook c5. Now, black has played knight c4 in this position before. But this is an interesting move, this rook c5 move. And black plays here. And it's the same idea we looked at with bishop g5 before. White has switched to a central attack with f4 and e5. But I think it turns out that h4, h5 actually helps black more than white in this position because after f4, a piece can settle in on g4. And so we'll see that. Black plays here. There are other moves. I'm not going to probably go into them. But there might be one good game to show you. Let's show you what white's plans are. It's always good to see both sides' plans. This move isn't very good now. It's a little too slow. Let me just show you this. This move now, threatening e5, just blasting away in the center and actually winning a piece in a lot of cases because the bishop will be hanging. Something will be hanging. Bishop, so he gets out of the way, and then e5 takes that. White takes back. Queen over. How does that work? How come that doesn't just lose a piece? Oh, because the bishop's trapped on g5. I think the point is he obviously can't take it because he loses material. And if he moves the knight, oh, look how bad that is. If he moves the knight, we've got this problem. Now we've not only won a pawn, but that pawn is pinned, so we have 1, 2, 3 on it. And when that takes, that queen and rook are coming right down to that knight. So that would be hopeless. Maybe knight h7 was slightly better, but the whole position's terrible. But black takes advantage of the fact that after you take this, he can play pawn takes, and the bishop is trapped on g5. At least that's his idea. But it does. I don't think it works very well. Takes, check. Here. This is just showing you white succeeding. Now knight d5 is extremely strong, as it turns out, but so is queen d6. It turns out to be a good move too. Bishop here, queen back. Takes. Just says with a winning endgame for white. And I don't know if I want to describe that, but you can kind of imagine that, right? That after this, white's getting all kinds of attacking. How's he defending this? You've got a rook on the 7th rank. Remember how strong that is. And white's actually a pawn ahead too. So this is, and he even has funny ideas too, like knight here looks very strong too. So there's 2 pawns hanging. So you might get a second pawn. Okay, what was that all about? Oh, that was a sideline. So in the game, this happens. And that's a better move for black. White can't get the same plan going. And if the queen just starts retreating, then that turns out that black's getting an initiative. Bishop here attacking the rook. And then knight here, threatening to win a whole piece, but also threatening bishop takes knight here. So black's getting an initiative here, and f4 just fails. I'm saying not f4 fails, but queen c1 fails. So bishop takes, rook takes, and now white better get going in the center. But it turns out if he plays here, now you've got b4 attacking that knight, which gives this knight more activity. And this is complicated. It ends up being just sort of an even game, but I won't go into that because we don't want to spend all day on it. So instead of that, white plays takes first. And this is probably the easiest way to play. Just stop e5 once and for all. Oh, but no, that's not true. I'm sorry. In this position, it's bad because white plays here, and this bishop's bad forever. You can't go to h6, and a lot of times white's going to have some attack, but the more important thing is that even the bishop can't even slither out this way. So now we have a knight d5 outpost plus an isolated pawn on d6. If black could have gotten the move f5 in, he would have been fine, because two bishops and this beautiful rook and this beautiful bishop would make up for that weak pawn. But he couldn't do that. So actually you have to take with the bishop, my mistake. And white should probably try e5, but it's only equal, because the bishops are pretty strong. I can show you how that goes, but I guess knight here. Rook. Oh, I'm sorry, b, okay. I was going to say that doesn't look like a very good move, but this move manages to come up with some kind of repetition. That's the best that white can do. White's starting, these bishops are starting to take over, so white has to do something. But he didn't play that. He played here, and black brought his bishop out with tempo, and now he's trying to break through in the center. Notice he's also attacking that pawn. e6 attacked that h-pawn, and black blasts through and doubles on the file. He can triple on the file next with another rook, but he decides first to attack that, get his pawns rolling. So you can see things aren't really going well here. Well, white gave up that pawn, but what else was he going to do? There was a threat of a4, there's a threat of doubling rooks. Things are going very bad. Tripling on the file. That was getting really bad. So just a couple more moves, I guess. I don't know if I want to do the whole thing. Now black's just a pawn up with the beautiful bishop, and he breaks open the long diagonal. See what happens? He says white can't either push or take because queen c3 leads to checkmate along the long diagonal. So let's just quickly get rid of this. There's probably not much more to go. In fact, he resigned already. I don't know if everybody sees the threat here. There's a threat here. If white played some random move, you'd have this check. Or would you? I think you would. Actually, this is not so clear. No, it's not clear at all. There's no. The queen is on a8. Sorry about that. Okay, well, you have another threat, and that's just rook h8, rook a8, and there's nothing to do about it. Queen takes a2. Sorry, I wanted to be fancy, but you'll just win this way instead. All right, okay, that was long, but maybe helps a little bit, because we wanted to finish our dragon survey, and I think that was kind of interesting. Okay, here we go. The line went, that's a Alekhine Alan, and I don't know which one it is. Okay, was there a question before this? Let me see. I'll bet there was, and I missed it. Anyway, there's an Alekhine defense that he's talking about, that Alan's talking about. He says, sorry, got that wrong. A3 knight orf, no, okay. Carlsen played A3. Oh, yeah. And not everybody says Carlsen played it, but the interesting thing is Carlsen actually watched Karyakin in the first round play it and said he was inspired by it. In other words, there was this knight orf. Now, I'm convinced this move A3 is completely, hopelessly a nothing move. But Karyakin played it in the first round, just to sort of get out of book, I think, was the main point. And then the second round, Carlsen played it. So it was really, you got to give Karyakin credit for it. Carlsen just sort of saw that game and played it. There is a point, which is that when black plays his b5 lines, you very, very often going to play a3 anyway to stop b4. But I don't think it's going to take over as the main anti-knight orf weapon. What are the book white lines against black's O'Kelly Sicilian? I'm not sure you did get that name right. Jonathan Russell. Let's take a quick look. Okay, this is the O'Kelly Sicilian. Here's the O'Kelly Sicilian, this move. The main point of this move is that if white plays here, which just is what white plays against almost everything else, black has this nice move e5 in one move. He didn't have to play e6, e5, and white doesn't have his normal knight b5 threatening here. So the comparison there would be something like, well, there are a bunch of good comparisons, but let's try this one, for example. That if black plays e5 here, knight b5 threatens knight here, check. And then white gets special play in a variety of ways. One way to do it is go here and get a grip on that square. And the O'Kelly, you can't play knight b5. So here's the O'Kelly. And so black is considered to have pretty equal play. If white goes back here, for example, black plays here, attacking the pawn, and then can pin this, and then can get the move d5 in. Same thing if white plays knight f5. If white plays knight f5, which is a very tempting move, here, looks like he's aiming for that square. And if you had to play here, white would be happy. He could put the knight back here, and a bishop here, and a knight here. But what happens is black can play d5, because white can't take the pawn the way he usually does, because black is winning the knight. So this is a very easy position to play for black. In other words, queen takes pawn, loses a piece to takes, bishop takes. So that's kind of the point of the O'Kelly. But you can play moves that aren't, and most people do play moves that aren't a6. The two main lines that I am thinking there might be, well, sometimes people actually play knight c3 first. You can also play g3. But the two main lines traditionally that have been an issue against a6 have been c4 with a Maroczy bind. Now black can't really stop white from going d4 and knight takes. And a lot of people don't like playing against these two pawns. So in other words, something like this, a lot of people don't. And you can play knight c3 first. Well, I'd probably play this first, right? There are quite a few players as black that don't really want to play into this pawn structure. So that's one of the big things about c4. Now there are other ways to play all this, but I won't get into that. What I like to play, and what I think a lot of good players like to play, is this move. That's a c3 Sicilian, which is a normal Sicilian anyway. And you've gotten the extra move knight f3 in, and he's gotten the extra move a6 in, and that's fun for white. Now that doesn't mean that people haven't played this a lot, right, as black. This is still played, and there's plenty of ways to play it. And so you can play the O'Kelly Sicilian, and there's a whole chapter in John M.'s book that's very good about this, about c3, c4, about everything, about the whole O'Kelly. It's Dangerous Weapons, the Sicilian, by an Everyman book, or Gloucester Press book, and he gives all the main lines. He gives d4, c4, c3, and all that, and you might want to take a look at it, because I think the O'Kelly is sound. But this is so simple to play, because if black plays normally, like this or something, white gets his standard c3 Sicilian, and a6 is a little bit funny, right? Because white has some attack. But even this is playable for black, by the way, and so is d5, which is the other main anti-c3 move. Because a6 here is not totally useless. For example, a lot of times white plays knight a3 ideas, thinking about here or here. Well, b5's already cut off. Also, there's no bishop b5 check, which often happens. But I think white has a small advantage here, and this has been analyzed a lot. I think this is in his book. The other move he gives is really bizarre. I think he gives e6 in his book as a side possibility here. It's a funny move you can make, and we can talk about that. But anyway, so I would recommend getting that book. But c3 seems to be the move. At least that's the one I would play, just because it's simple. Oh yeah, in fact we have a thing here. c3 refutes. Refutes the O'Kelly. Well, not quite, but it's a good line, and very good. I think you picked one of the best lines there, Rich, to matching. What do we have here? We have the Alyekins. Yeah, okay, so before I get to that, I want to cover one more thing because I keep doing this. I keep not getting far enough with the things people sent me. Oh, let's talk about something we looked at last week. Someone asked me the question about the Petrovs. I just think this is fun. About Yobava, who of course is now one of the world's best players, but also one of the world's most fun players, asked about this line. I looked it up. White has a really overwhelming lead here, so it's amazing he can play this way. But okay, so this was the point, and d4 is the natural move. And some people played knight f3, and I think that's a good move too, because white has no weaknesses. So this is a case of what I was talking about, a gambit, where white has no weaknesses and black is just playing moves, sort of. Here's a good example. I think right now, somebody castled here, but that at least gives black some attacking chances. I think this, and now don't even castle into it, just play d4, and play bishop e3, very solid. You might even go queenside, and you're a pawn ahead. I just don't believe this thing. But let me show you how things can go wrong and why black might want to play this way. Castles. This was played in one game. Castles, knight c3, and I think black's already okay here, actually, or maybe okay. White could have just played h3 first, though, so there'd be no sacrifices on this square after queen h5. Whoops. So here. Now what black wants to do is play bishop d6, threatening bishop takes and mate. So you can get attacks with this kind of thing. And let me show you this. White did play here, black did sacrifice, and it turns out white doesn't have that move we talked about last week after bishop takes, because he hasn't played d4 yet. So he doesn't have a good discovery on the queen. So here's what happened. And this is quite funny. He played knight here. What he should do is just start repeating. He should play here, and then probably come back again. Or maybe even play here, but then there's various perpetuals that happen. And let me show you, for example, wait, why isn't check just winning? Oh, no, let's check first. And then maybe h6. And then check, and then check. This looks like a win. Oh, maybe not. I don't know. Somehow it's a draw. I think if black plays perfectly, if white plays perfectly, it's a draw. But obviously white doesn't want that. But he plays here, which is even worse, and he won the game because black played something here. Anyway, but it turns out black has a win here. Oh yeah, black tried to weasel the rook over, and white was actually able to hold on to all this. I think he started with f4. But there's a winning move here for black. I don't know if any of you can see it offhand. There's basically a forced win here. And it's not bishop d6, oddly enough. It's h5. h5 threatens a couple things. One is rook up and rook over. And the other thing is knight up, although not yet because of two checks here and taking the queens off. But the other thing is bishop to d6. So there's just too many things going on here. Just for example, let's say you stop rook h6 with a move like this. Then you have bishop here attacking the knight. Pawn up is forced. And now knight here would be a mistake because of check, and then check with the queen. But what you would do is you would play check first. You'd play check first, and then play knight over, threatening checkmate, and I think this is just resignable at this point. Wait, why is that? Excuse me. Oh, yeah, because you can't take twice. You play check, you can't play check again because the knight's pinned. Boy, that was true anyway. So maybe knight g4 was winning. Let me see. Sorry. No, it wasn't true because the king wasn't pinned. Okay, so check first, and then knight g4. Okay. Where's the best place to buy my 4 volumes? Maybe Amazon. I'm guessing that's probably where you get the best deal. Or any chess bookstore. Or maybe you can find a used copy, on eBay or something like that. So wherever you like to buy your books, if you buy it on Amazon, at least it'll go to the publisher's thing and I'll get some royalties. But not much. Don't ever buy because of giving me royalties, but just in case. Just a little side comment there. Oh, so what was I doing here? I forgot. So what I wanted to do is show you that. Oh no, this is the wrong one. The Petrovs thing. So I don't really believe in this for black, but he does have some chances, I guess is the way to look at it. I'm sorry, not the elephant. The Petrovs. I guess I could transpose. Here. So I like this knight f3 move, which is kind of the one I mentioned last week, but just don't castle too early for white because it's risky. So the main line is here, and then we looked at this with this game. In fact, let me do that. EX 144. Yeah, this is this Bach-Yobava game. This is the original game with Yobava. Not that other people haven't played it, but this is at a high level. Okay, and we saw that Yobava played knight c6, and there were 2 games, and I was going to show you this one. I still think I was right about this. Last week I mentioned this, and I thought, well, what's wrong with that? And I think I looked at this, and it's actually pretty easy to play. So I think my instincts were good here. Black has a bunch of tactics he can try with knight takes d4, and even bishop here followed by check, but none of them really work at all. White's just much, much better. So after the natural move, you just defend. You can just play bishop e3 or c3. I mentioned c3 yesterday. I was just making things up over the board, but this might be even better. But you can also just play c3, and they're both just good for white, I think. So I think my instincts were right about playing knight f3, because the minute black takes, all of a sudden he's getting some play here. Did he take? Is that, yeah. And then he checked to get the queens off. But as we mentioned, white's got some real play here. Black's got some real play here because he gets castled with tempo. He actually got the advantage in this game. It's probably about equal now, or maybe even slightly better for white. I think it's about equal because black's so well developed. But in the game, black outplayed. Yobava outplayed Bach, got an advantage, and couldn't quite win because Bach's a good grandmaster and managed to draw. But it was interesting that black actually came out better. Rook here. Oh, and now an easy way to equalize just immediately is just here. This is very good because it gets rid of the bishop. It gives black a pure bishop pair, and white has a bad bishop, and that makes up for a pawn. You know, white's equal, but no better than that. So that was a pretty easy way to play. Anyway, he actually got the advantage, amazingly enough, black did, which shows at this top of level, I mean, what is Bach, a 2600 player or something? And yet, Yobava got the advantage with black by playing this crazy opening. So I wanted to show you that. I think I've got some more analysis here, but it's not that important. Okay, how are we doing for time? We've got, so we can get to some questions. Let's do a little more chat, and then I'll get to some other things people sent me. Okay, just a reminder, thumbs up on the video, thank you. One interesting thing is I just found out is that my stats with black is 10% more wins than with white, and I can barely break even with white. Well, gee, you know, that's been happening to me when I've been playing a little bit, but maybe you're white, maybe you're too ambitious with white, so you get in trouble. It's a possibility. It's hard to answer that unless I know what your openings are. You can send me an email to askimwatson@chessclub.com and tell me what your repertoire choices normally are and why you think, I could tell you why I think you're getting in some trouble as black, or maybe there's even something psychological. The interesting thing is I have a decent repertoire with white, but nothing special with black. I have to improvise with black. Well, maybe you play more creatively with black. It's also possible that even though you have a decent repertoire as white, it's easy to prepare for, or maybe it's well-known kind of thing, and maybe you don't play it as well as you kind of hope that you would play it. So maybe you put more time into your white repertoire, but you actually don't play it that well. That happens. In fact, I think that would describe my problems with white at certain times when I've played. I've had real problems with white sometimes and done better with black. The other thing is you'll find your opponents playing more aggressively against you as white, and so maybe you're a good counterattacker. So I also have more wins with white. Othylophil. I play Nidor from Caro-Kann, Slav, semi-Slav. The line was an OTB I played. Oh, we're still talking about the Alekhine game. Why do you think that is, Thylo? I'm amazed because in my case, I feel like I'm more confident with white, but it turns out to be false confidence. Yeah, I think it's hard to say without looking at your actual game. So everybody get what's going on here? Post Yoda is asking about why does he win more with black than white? And Thylophil is saying the same thing happens. I think sometimes you commit more with white, and so you expose yourself more. Also, sometimes when you're black, your opponent is trying to win too hard, and maybe you guys are both really good counterattacking players. Fischer versus Brown. Yeah, I know that game. Very famous Alekhine's defense game. I can hear a dog barking. Oh, that's my dog. One of my dogs. Don't like it when my knight is chased on and on away. Is he deliberately not looking at my... No, I'm looking at it. It's just there's too many things to look at, and I want to scroll down before I go back to it. It's hard to get to everything, folks. Okay, I'm going back to that Alekhine's now. Here it is. Okay, so e4, c6. You know, the first time you put it on there, you said you made a mistake, so I thought, oh, I'm not sure if this is worth doing, but you didn't mean that this was a mistake. You meant that somehow earlier it was a mistake, I guess. I'll assume this is still correct then. Knight f3, g6. I used to play this as black, and the g6 line. Okay, the most critical line by far is that. That's the hard line to play against. Bishop e2 I always had fun against. g7, c4, knight b6. Yeah, this is an old way of playing for white that I think is completely harmless. I think white's completely equal here. Knight c3, bishop g4. Now usually you castle and play knight c6 moves first. I don't know if it makes a difference, but I think it kind of does. I think bishop g4 is a little early because you can play things like b3 followed by bishop e3, but I won't swear by that. So white played castles, I assume. Where are we? Bishop g4, bishop e3 now. Okay, bishop e3 first. Castles. Okay, because we could play b3 there, but anyway. Knight c6. Oh, there we are in the standard position. So this has been played a million times. b3. Okay, so what are the other moves here? I'm going to have to really test my memory here. Yeah, b3 is normal. And then I think the most common way to play this is d5. In fact, did you mention that in a later post? That's what I used to play. I used to play d5 in that position. Let me see. Over the board game. Oh, there were countless games of this. Begirov's book that was way before Fischer Brown analyzed d5 the first time that I saw it, and it tons of analysis. d5 is very clever. The first idea is that you're thinking of taking here, and then grabbing that pawn with a wonderful square for your knight on c4, as well as winning a pawn. So white usually goes here. There's not that much else to do. If he goes here, he's exposing his isolated pawn, and white doesn't have a typical attacking position against the isolated pawn. Black's ideally placed for the isolated pawn. So that's the move they usually make. And then you go to c8, I think. You can go to d7, but it's maybe not the best. And the idea of going to c8, let me show you, is that you get something like this. It's really kind of clever. And then here, and it looks like white's just better. White has two bishops. He's got space on the queen side. He can play here, for example. Because if black takes, you have rook b1 and rook b7 and a 7th rank rook. But what happens is, and let's see if I can get this right, something like here, here, and by the time white gets attacking on b5, black plays knight up. So the knights are looking very good here. There's 3 pieces attacking this. There could even be a 4th one in some cases. Anyway, that's the basic idea. Now that wasn't forced, but I just want to show you the basic idea for black. Okay, going back. Yeah, d5 is the main move. And you said e5? Did you say e5 in the game? No. Okay, I never played Alyaka and I can hear it. Okay, so I answered your question, I guess. Anyway, there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of theory of that position, but I think black is fine. It's a fun line to play as black, by the way. White usually doesn't quite know what he's doing. Who would win? Boy, I don't know. Casey's dog. Who's Casey? My dog's not a fighting dog. I think I would I withdraw from that fight. Wouldn't bet any money anyway. I'm too lazy to analyze my own games. No, you should all analyze your own games. Stockfish is free, but I also commented on to use it often. I'm just buzzing through your comments. Good. Okay, so we have a little bit of time left. Not officially, we've gone the hour, but let me see if I can get one more thing in. Something short. I need something short. If I have anything short. I did want to mention, actually, come to think of it, that I was asked about the bishop f4. This is something I can answer pretty quickly. About the bishop f4 queen's gambit declined. Are there any good books? I was asked. We should talk about books more on this show, really. But just for example, bishop e7 or knight f6. I mean, it doesn't really matter if white chooses this line, bishop f4. The question was, were there any lines for playing black here? And were there any books, any good books? And most of the books, as I mentioned then, I couldn't really think of anything really good, are from White's point of view. There's a lot of stuff, DVDs and books and articles from White's point of view. But there are some things from Black's. One thing is Rizitano. One of our regular contributors here mentioned Rizitano's book, Chess Explained. It's a 2007 book, but it just covers the whole Queen's Gambit decline very well. It might be worth it. It's something to have. Then there's analysis, and Bishop f4 wouldn't be up to date there, but it's worth taking a look at. More recently, John Cox had the 2011 Everyman book. That's also not that recent, but still, it's getting there, called Declining the Queen's Gambit, and it's another good basis for an entire repertoire. He gives a repertoire with knight bd7. In other words, after castles e3. There are basically 3 main moves here. I hope I don't get that wrong, but I think of there being 3 main moves here. The original move was this, and I was going to show you a game with this, so I'll do that next week maybe. Real beautiful game and new ideas for Black in this position. So it's quite possible to play this position for Black. But the two that the professionals have sort of turned to in the last few years is knight here. That's become a huge professional one, but it's more passive. And a lot of these guys are very happy to draw as Black. You have to remember that. And then the other one is this move, just getting your bishop out and maybe supporting c5. Because after all, after c5, White's main move by far is this one. And then he puts a queen here and a pawn here and goes here and maybe attacks the bishop this way and puts the rook over. And that's all avoided if you played c5 after b6, because you can retake with a pawn. On the other hand, you've used an extra tempo and you may have slightly weakened your light squares. So those are the main moves. So what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, so Cox's repertoire in his book is based on that, and that's a good repertoire. I mean, that's a good thing. The theory's evolved. You'd have to look at. You need an update, but it's worth doing. There's also a video, chess.com video by Sam Shankland from about 2012, and just recently Alex Yermolinsky has a whole bunch of videos on ICC about bishop f4 from both points of view, and it's an excellent discussion of the ideas. I think most of the games, a lot of the games are knight bd7, I think. There may be some c5 in there. Anyway, he gives a bunch of bishop f4 lines. I don't think it's a whole repertoire, but it's a lot of games and discussion. He's played it himself, so that really helps. So I would say look at those sources and just look at a lot of games and annotations. Look at your database. I wish I could do better than that, but at least there's something there to kind of take a look at. I'm looking at this right here and wondering why you can't play knight b5. Oh, bishop b4 check at some point, right? Let's take a quick look here. If c3, we have knight, bishop c7, right? Oh, and then check. Okay. And that forces the king to move, probably. And then we have this square. It doesn't matter. In any case, we have that square covered. Okay. I was just looking at here, and that's not desirable, obviously. Okay, yeah, so you just check and put your queen on e7, and obviously black's better then. Okay, sorry. Just staring at that, wondering what was going on. Okay, folks, I think this is a good place to stop, and I may show a bishop f4 game next week. Please send me more questions. Send me some emails. A lot of the stuff that you talk about would be a lot easier to answer in an email because because you could add more detail and put it in context, and I could also have time to kind of look at it and think about it. What is with knight h5, getting the bishop here? In which position? Knight h5 where? Oh, in the London. We can take a quick look at that, I think. What's our time situation? Yeah, we got time to look at that. Okay, knight h5 when is the question. Okay, you could play knight h5 right now, for example. Okay, knight h5 in this position. I think we talked about this once. Maybe not. In the Queen's Gambit declined. Okay, first of all, you're not going to play here. That's too cooperative, although it's not bad. This position's okay for the reasons we talked about earlier. Of course, the knight won't take immediately. The knight will sit there a while and hope that we castle first. So black can make another move here, probably. Some c... Yeah, what does black play here? Maybe c6, maybe b6. So you can play bishop g3, but the move I like in all these positions, and there's a lot of openings like this, is bishop e5. Because this move is very, very weakening. It's terrible for this pawn structure. It weakens this diagonal. It stops the bishop from being active. And so this would be a good position. And in a position like this, you can sometimes attack the knight, but much better is just go back now. Now whenever black does take this, and he probably will take it, notice there's no retreat squares anymore, then now this king side's quite weak, because when you play bishop d3, there's going to either be an f5, which gives away big time squares, or a h6, which gives away more squares, all those light squares, or even a g6, and against g6 there's all kinds of attacking chances. Let me just show you that. Let's say black makes a move. I don't know, c6 is the most normal move in this kind of position. G6, it's getting scary already. We're getting to the point where there's even rook h7 ideas sometimes. But you probably ignore that. You just play here, threatening bishop takes g6. He has to play queen e8 probably. And then maybe just castles, and maybe just rook h6. Look at this. There's a threat of taking twice here. There's a threat of rook he1. He's going to have to play f5 at some point. That's a very bad sign if he has to play f5, because then black is really positionally in just terrible shape. And notice white doesn't have his bad bishop like he does a lot of times in this, say, the Stonewall defense to the Dutch. So here you just break through. You play rook over first, then you play g4. Or maybe you play g4 first, I don't know. And he can't take as a bishop g6. In fact, actually, I think I'd play g4 first. Whoops, sorry, this position. And you just break everything down. You're even threatening to take and play g4 again, just to smash everything down. You'll find these positions are very close to winning. Now, maybe a brilliant player as black can defend, but there's no way a brilliant player can get anywhere near equality. Most likely, the best a brilliant player can do here is not get mated. But see, the problem is there's this breakdown of the center also. There's just too much going on here. Okay, so that's knight h5, if f6. Now, I admit f6 is not a good move, so let's go back. But I just wanted to show you that. So instead of f6, maybe black would play something like, say, this. But he's got to be real careful not to lose a pawn here, because we're about to take on d5, aren't we? I think we're just losing a pawn here. Yeah, that was easy, wasn't it? If they're there, now we're threatening to win a piece with g4. Notice how the knight's stranded and it can't get back. And we just won a pawn in the center, right? With queen takes or knight takes. I'd say either one. Clear pawn. Okay, so he can't play knight d7. So So how's he getting his pieces out? Well, he could play something like b6, g6, knight c6 maybe. No, whoops, same problem. Oh, come on. g6 maybe? I'm not sure. And then if you want to, you can save your bishop and come back again. Something's wrong here. Maybe knight c6 is playable. Because it shouldn't be this bad for black. This is almost lost for black, which is not right. Here you could take and make that. That's a weak pawn. Or maybe just here threatening to bring the bishop back. And after knight takes, we play knight takes with tempo. We play pawn takes, threatening g4. Now the knight's trapped, so he has to play g6. I think that's forced. Oh, what a horrible move to have to make. And now we're on this pawn again. Queen takes or knight takes. I like knight takes, actually. But queen takes is also good. You're just winning here. Okay, well, that was a good answer, wasn't it? So somehow that seems to work pretty well. So knight h5 is, I think, too early there because of bishop e5. Bishop e5 is a wonderful move. And you'll see that occurs in several other openings, too. Like I say, the London system, other Queen's Gambits, that happens. And also, there are some other openings where this happens. Maybe some Grunfelds, I don't know. King's Indian, this will happen. This bishop e5 idea will happen. All right, folks. It's cool. Send me some emails. I'm not getting as many as I did, or messages, or whatever you want. You can always message me on ICC. I really appreciate you guys coming on. I always get good questions. We didn't have a single bad question today. And so please tune in next week, and we'll have some more fun. Thank you.